Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to More Than a Game with Fritz and Pitts. I'm JD Fritz, one of your hosts. Joining me also is Drew Pitzer. He is the other host here on More Than a Game. Today we are in week 3. We're going to discuss and review our games from last week in the EPAC and also give our predictions, analysis for games here in week 4. And right now, I'll turn it over to Drew. Drew, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great, brother. I know it's been a couple tough days for you, brother, and I appreciate you, taking time out and still joining the pod with us today. Again, last week was another great week of high school football in EPAC, and I think we have another huge action-packed week ahead of us too, man. I can't wait to cover the game. We got Spring Mills and Musselman on Friday. It's gonna be a good one, brother.
Yeah, it should, man. I'm excited to finally do that game. Spring Mills, we did them the first game against Jefferson. We've kind of seen how they've improved over the last couple weeks. So that game should be exciting. Musselman got a big win, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes. But we're gonna first get right to it to the HD Woodson Martinsburg game, and I'll let you start with that game, Drew. What'd you think?
Yeah, again, that was a huge bounce back performance from Martinsburg. Obviously, starting the season 0-2. That hasn't happened since Tyson Bajan was a sophomore, and that was all the way back in 2015. So, a huge win for Martinsburg to get their confidence back going because, again, they still are the defending champions in the state of West Virginia. We saw last week with Spring Mills getting past Connellsville as well too. So, seeing both those teams that were in a state championship game last year, kind of bouncing back from two tough losses the week before.
Dick, he had a heck of a breakout game. 10 for 12, 235 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. So I think, he had that breakout game that Martinsburg been looking for from him so far this year. And they pretty much just dominated the whole game against Woodson. I thought Woodson would give them a little bit more of a game. I had that prediction much closer. Although I had Martinsburg winning, I had them only winning by a touchdown. But obviously, I was way wrong on that game, and they came out and really proved a point, I think, to everybody, not only in the Panhandle, but across the state.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, JD, I mean, they really proved the point. Brian Dick finally looking real comfortable in the quarterback position, looking to finally solidify himself and get his feet underneath of him. Defensively, they played extremely well too. We're swarming to the ball. Again, I believe they won 73-6 or 73-0.
Seven,
That's typically,
seven,
yep,
six, yeah.
7. Yep. So that was again Martinsburg bounced back. I had them winning 49-14. I thought they would dominate, but I didn't realize they would dominate to this level. Again, when you kind of make the Bulldogs mad and Coach Walker got a chip on his shoulder, that's a really dangerous team now moving forward. A couple weeks into the season, getting closer to the midseason mark, then Bulldogs are looking kind of scary, JD.
Yeah, they are, and people are gonna have to watch out for them. And I'm sure, once they get farther closer to the playoffs, they're gonna kind of get back into their normal form as people are expected and used to seeing Martinsburg do. So moving on, Drew, we got Hedgesville at Morgantown. Kind of a rough one for the Ville. How'd you see that one?
Yeah, again, I was pretty close on that prediction. I think I said 49-7. It ended up being
Yep.
52-7. So that was probably my closest game of the week. Obviously, Hedgesville was really undermanned and undermatched. Max Twig had another great game. You see Cooper, he had another great game as well. Morgantown, obviously the number one team in the state in the WSSAC and the Metro News polls. So they're looking really good. I'm really excited to see them again. We'll have them, I believe, either next week or the week after at Spring Mills. That'll be another great showcase for them. But again, that was just a tremendous output from Hedgesville. They actually battled a lot better in the second half, really limited them. I think they only scored 2 touchdowns in the second half. So again, Hedgesville still up and coming, a really young team. They got the building blocks and the pieces to get better. It's going to just take a lot of time.
Yeah, I agree. And Chaz Milburn, I watched a couple of highlights of him. He had a decent game. He hit some nice balls. He's starting to mature more as the season's progressing, and that's kind of what Coach Faircloth wants to see. They might not be winning games right now, but as long as his team's improving and players are kind of moving farther along and as to where he would like to see them at this point in the season. I think he probably is happy with that, although I know he'd like to get some wind under his belt. Hopefully they will see some wins here over the next few weeks. Getting back to Twig, he continues his hot streak as being one of the top candidates for the Kennedy Award winner so far this year. He's 30 for 42, 558 yards and 6 touchdowns. 87 yards on the ground, 5 TDs rushing. I mean, those are all state numbers, Drew.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, he's currently him and Wack from Wheeling Park are my two top candidates right now. Really believe they separate themselves. Obviously, we have Xavier Anderson too at Spring Mills, still trying to build that cohesiveness with Rylan Swartz. So I think moving forward later in the season, I think he'll kind of get himself back into that picture as well too. But again, Twig and Wack are clear two top Kennedy candidates as of right now. JD.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week. There, each week it seems like they're starting to separate themselves a little bit more from the pack. But you got other guys, that I've seen some numbers for that they're still putting up good numbers, but these guys are just kind of in a class of their own right now. But listen, we'll keep everybody updated on that Kennedy Award as the weeks go on. I think, like we said last week, over the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll really start to see kind of what names are really starting to push forward. And if there's any names that are going to start getting, kind of coming up with those other two guys, I like to see, 3 or 4, even 5 names kind of in there. You don't want to always see it just to be a 2-man race the rest of the season. So hopefully a couple guys step up and kind of throw their names in a hat as well. Moving on, Drew, we got Musselman at Wheeling Park. That was a surprise. One game I lost. I was wrong about that one.
So
Musselman
was I.
Musselman proved something, but I'll let you start on that game.
Yeah, again, speaking with Coach Thomas earlier this week, I asked him, I was like, man, you guys shut out Wheeling Park in the second half. They were up 14-6 going into halftime and they ended up winning the game 21-14. I said, how did you guys limit Whack defensively? And he said, I'll tell you what, our best defense was our offense. They really won the time of possession, kept Wheeling Park's dangerous offense off the field. Whack ended up having 190 yards in the first half and finished with 230. And Coach Thomas, I quote, said it was a quiet 230, if that can possibly be quiet. So again, that was a great win by Musselman, kind of a program rebounding win. Obviously, going from a 1-9 season last year and starting off the season 0-2, and being right now the fourth ranked team in the state, really dominated them in the second half and setting up a huge showdown with Spring Mills this weekend at home. I think this is going to be a great game for them, JD.
Yeah, it definitely should be, Drew. I mean, Musselman did their thing too on the ground. They love to put it on the ground, with Lazier, Jaden Ryan, also Zach Miller running the ball. They had to over 200 yards themselves. It just took 3 guys to do it, where, Wack had 200, and I actually think he had, I had him down for 244 and 2 scores. So, he's like a one-man show pretty much for Wheeling Park. And he's had 200 yards, over 200 yards in each of the first 3 games to give him 725 for the season and to go along with 10 touchdowns. That's super impressive. And right now, I would say right now, he probably is my front runner for the Kennedy. Although right close, like 1A, 1B is Maddox Twig. But right now, I like Brennan Wack.
Yeah, Brendan White, like you said, I mean, I would right now have him currently as the top candidate for the Kennedy Award winner. But again, Twig is right there, and with Morgantown still being undefeated, I think the record and overall impact of their play will be a big factor with that. But again, Wheeling Park has a huge matchup with University, who is ranked number 2 in the state right now. So that's coming up this week. They're trying to bounce back from really tough, home loss. I would say probably the biggest upset is in the season so far for Musselman. And again, that was a tremendous output. Musselman actually ended up having all 3 of their scores were passing touchdowns. So they were rushing the ball, they were getting the ball on the ground and controlling the ground game, but really were taking the top off the defense with Armentrout. He had 2 touchdowns, and I think it was Shelton. I don't know who got the other one. I know Armentrout had 2
Well,
receiving touchdowns.
Well, I like to see that from those guys, Brian Thomas, putting it in the air a little bit more because they're not typically known for to being a passing team. They like to ground and pound and use 2 or 3 guys to be effective running the ball. But to put the ball in the air, Armentrout, we did a couple of games last week. A Musselman, he's somebody that stood out to me. Playing that tight end position. Big target, just like we saw last week at Liberty of Washington. They had that big 6'4" kid. You just throw it up there to him and let him go make a play. And Armentrout did that for Musselman. So I think he's going to be another key factor this week. So you got Armentrout on one side and you got Xavier Anderson on the other side. So it's going to be interesting to see how they implement those guys in the passing game. We already know Xavier Anderson's a big weapon, for Spring Mills in that offense. So it should be an exciting game, Drew. With that being said, we got Connellsville out of Pennsylvania at Spring Mills. Kind of another lopsided game for Spring Mills, but how'd you see that one?
Yeah, again, that was one game that we were both right on to. Connellsville was just simply outmatched. I mean, they didn't have the athleticism, they didn't have the speed. And the front line was, I'm not going to say they were incredibly small, but they weren't able to handle Spring Mill's pressure. And they're relentless with their blitz. They're blitzing at about an 85% rate right now, which is definitely one of the highest in the state. So looking at Spring Mills, that was a great bounce back performance because they lost to Wheeling Park the week before. So that's why I think the Spring
Right.
Mills and Musselman game will be such a huge impact because again, I still see Spring Mills as a more talented team, and they've won the last 2 years. I don't even think Musselman's even scored on them. So Musselman will have a chip on their shoulder. But again, great bounce back performance from Spring Mills. Got a lot of contributions from Blake Sanders. The Jones brothers really showed up as well too. Swartz also getting really comfortable, similar to Brian Dick. Again, they're starting to catch their stride. The EPAC is starting to improve. JD.
Yeah, and I'm really starting to like Tavon Jones at running back. We saw him the last couple of years at Washington, very effective, but now he's in a little more dynamic type of offense with probably a better offensive line, and he's just so shifty, elusive. And when he gets in that open field, man, he's got that burst of speed that it's hard to catch him. And we saw him on that one highlight. I think he posted something on his X account this week, and he looked very impressive. And when you combine him with Blake Sanders, man, that's you got two of the best running backs probably in the state, a 1-2 punch combination. So I really like those guys. So I think they're going to cause problems a little bit for Musselman, but we'll wait and see. But it should be a good one. Moving on, we had Liberty at Washington. We called that game, Drew. A little bit of a surprise with Liberty. Washington didn't kind of show up the way we thought they might had, but they had three costly turnovers. What'd you think about that game?
Yeah, again, I mean, I know the score was pretty lopsided towards the end, but I mean, Washington battled until deep into the fourth quarter. Obviously, not having Casey there too really put a lot of pressure on Shields, and they did a great job of keeping him contained. Sean Case from Liberty did a great job of keeping the offense in a flow. Had no turnovers in comparison to Washington, who ended up having about three from the quarterback position. So again, Washington was in the game, but those self incriminating injuries, man, or you turn the ball over, you have penalties. That's just what really killed them. And having a young team like that, it's going to be a good learning performance from them coming off a big win against Hedgesville, kind of more of a letdown. But we'll see how they perform this week. Obviously, they're playing against Bishop O'Connell, so that'll be an interesting matchup for them, JD.
Yeah, and I agree. I was pretty impressed with Liberty's quarterback, Sean Case. A big, tall kid, could run a little bit. Through three touchdown passes, two to the big guy, big tight end he had, and then one deep pass to the wideout Stevens. I think his name was Stevens. His last name was Stevens. But so I was pretty impressed with them. They had a linebacker that just was relentless, bringing the pressure, blitzing, and just blowing everything up in the backfield. I mean,
Little
Washington,
dude.
yeah, they couldn't get out, but they were a man down. They didn't have Alan Casey. He's their top running back. So they had to go with Phil Shields, who's kind of like that hybrid receiver running back, combination. You can line him up just about anywhere where you think he's going to be the most effective. But unfortunately for Washington, he pretty much had to be RB1 for them that night. And they kind of knew they Liberty's defense kind of knew what they were going to do, and they kind of were a little bit one dimensional, and it made it a lot easier for that Liberty defense, and they were just bringing too many people for Washington's line to block.
Agreed. Agreed.
So the last one we had Jefferson at Sharando. Good game for Jefferson. Still came out on the losing end, but Jefferson hung in there. It was a scoreless game at halftime. What'd you think overall about that game?
Yeah, I think that was a big improvement from Jefferson as well. They were also moving the ball against Sharando. Now we got Braylon Holmes coming back. He made a great effort on defense, applied a lot of pressure. And again, defensively, Jefferson's been playing extremely well. I mean, they've had a really tough stretch to open the season against Morgantown, against Spring Mills, and then against Sharando. That's probably three of the top 10 teams in the tri-state area that you had to open your season with. So I know 0-3, but they're still ranked 11th in the state just due to their strength of schedule. I do think that they'll find a way to get through. They're obviously on a bye this week. I think it's a well-needed bye. Get some health. Make sure you can address some of the skill positions. They have to find a way. I mean, this is a whole different identity for them. It's usually their offensive side of the ball is typically Jefferson's strength, but this year I would say their defensive line and their ability to in short distance and short yardage and goal to go situations, they've been tremendous this year, JD. And I think eventually they'll find a way to break through. I still really like this Jefferson team.
Yeah, I do too. Their defense seems to get better every game they played. I would say Sharando, aside from Morgantown, is probably maybe a little tougher game than even the Spring Mills game. But to have a scoreless game at at Sharando, just shows that the defense has really been what's keeping them in games this year so far, even though they haven't won a game. And that's where I'm going to roll over to the offense. Unfortunately for them, the offense has only put up one touchdown in 3 games. That's not a good recipe for success, especially for a Jefferson team that should and does have a lot of weapons at their disposal. And you would think with Tony Allen and Rockwell and the guys in the backfield, Takeem Drake and Ledbetter, they would have quite a few more scores on the board. But unfortunately for them, they don't, and I think that's really hurting them because their defense can only hold so long and can only be on the field so long. And that's what we've noticed in the first few games that they've played is their defense seems to be on the field a whole lot more than their offense, unfortunately. But also, like you mentioned, give a shout out to Bray Holmes. He came back, played a hell of a game at the defensive end position. I mean, I don't know what the status will be moving forward with him playing quarterback. If there's, going to be a competition at this point in the season, we'll have to wait and kind of see that. But he's definitely making noise on the defensive end. And I think if he stays on defense, I think he's only going to improve as he starts to get healthier. So you're going to see some sacks add up. You're going to see a lot of pressure, more pressure on the quarterback, which will fare well for the rest of those guys, especially in the secondary.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to kind of add on that, obviously, Jefferson's still just searching for that identity. I have seen over the last couple of weeks, the turnovers and the penalties have been reduced greatly. They're starting to find a rhythm, and they are moving the ball down the field. It's just really putting the ball in the end zone. They're really struggling. Again, you have Rockwell, you have Keem Drake, you have Tony Allen, which I personally to me is one of the top 3 receivers in the state. So again, they just have to find a way, not necessarily to force feed those guys, but put them in good positions. How Herrick was doing last year, really facilitating with the offensive side of the ball. Everybody was getting a lot of touches. I think that's going to be key for Jefferson if they really want to turn the season around. They got to find a way to be not so one dimensional. JD.
Yeah, I agree, Drew, 100%. And, there's not a whole lot more we can say about Jefferson. They just need to keep improving every game, cut down on the mistakes, a lot of the self-inflicted penalties we've seen that they seem to have every game. We didn't do the Sharando game, so I'm not sure how they were on a lot of the pre-snap penalties and different things like that. Hopefully, they were a little more improved this week, and if they can keep on improving, because we saw them start 0-4 last year. I mean, they pretty much had the same schedule starting out this year, and they have a bye, much needed bye, but then they come back and they're at Martinsburg, so it doesn't get any easier with the second ranked team in the state being Martinsburg. So we'll see how they can kind of get themselves together this week and prepare for Martinsburg. But that's going to do it for our week 3 breakdown. And now we're going to move in for our week 4 predictions, Drew. We're going to start with Martinsburg Bulldogs. They're at Hedgesville this year. How do you see that game playing out?
Yeah, unfortunately for Hedgesville, I don't think this is going to be a game, but they had over the last couple of years. We've talked about it last year. I mean, they played them tough. It was only, I believe, a 36-6 win they had last year. So Hedgesville, that rivalry, not necessarily a rivalry anymore, but I think that they'll still try to compete. I still have Martinsburg winning 60-6.
And I'm pretty close on that same score, Drew. I'm right there with you. I've got Martinsburg, and I agree. Hedgesville is just going to be a little too overwhelmed with Martinsburg. And now that Martinsburg's got that first win under the belt, I think the rest of this season, if you're playing Martinsburg, watch out. They're going to be out for blood every single game. And I've got them winning 63-0.
Okay, yeah, I see.
So
Because I called Hedgesville getting a score last week, and they always find a way to put some sort of
they
points on
do.
the
They
board.
do. And it's still possible because by the second half, you got a running clock. A lot of second and third team guys are playing on both sides of the ball. No, we're not trying to predict. We're just this. I mean, what's going to happen? But just given both teams' history and the start of the season for each team. Hedgesville doesn't look like they're in a good position. So that's what normally happens when you're up big. What is it, 35 going into the fourth quarter? But if it is even higher than that, I think they even maybe run the clock possibly in the third. I don't know if they start running the clock in the third quarter. I think that's up to the coaches. I think they
Yeah.
can decide if they want to start running the clock. I mean, if it's 50 or 60 nothing, to start the second
Yeah.
half. and you've got to make a decision to just have a running clock the whole second half of the game.
Yeah, I agree. And like last week with Martinsburg and HD Woodson actually was okay with shortening the second half length to 10 minutes. They played 2 5-minute quarters with a running clock, which again I could see that happening. But it's high school football on any given Friday. We'll see how Hedgesville plays against them. But again, I had them winning 60-6. But we'll go ahead and move forward to another game within the area. We have Washington playing at Bishop O'Connell. JD, who do you got?
Well, let me tell you, Bishop O'Connell's starting off 1-2, but that doesn't mean anything because I watched a little bit of film on them, and they've got good athletes too over there at Bishop O'Connell, and they scare me. They're a little more athletic than Liberty. I thought Liberty was a really equal match between them and Washington just had costly turnovers. I think is what kind of kept them out of the game for the most part, but Bishop O'Connell, they're more athletic. They're a little faster than what Liberty was. And I think they could cause some problems for Washington. And I see them coming in, knocking off the Patriots 33-12.
Okay, that's a really close score to me. I had them losing 28-14 to Bishop O'Connell, but again, I think a lot of it has to deal with Alan Casey's health, and how the offense goes through and improving. Again, you have 3 turnovers in crucial times when you're in opposing territory. Again, that's what really killed them against Liberty. And give credit to Liberty though, they put them in those positions by stacking the box. Kept 8 pretty much. It was almost engaged 8 the whole game, and they were playing man coverage, just forcing Washington to really make plays through the passing game. And unfortunately, they just haven't really been able to find their stride with the receiver and quarterback room, getting that chemistry. So again, I had them losing 28-14 against Bishop O'Connell, but we'll move forward again. This is not an EPAC game, but this is Wheeling Park versus University. I have Wheeling Park bouncing back after a tough loss against Musselman last week. I had them winning 21-20 on the road at University. JD?
Yeah, but that's a good matchup. University, Wheeling Park, they're both top 10 teams, right? I'm not sure what I know. Metro
Two
News
and
is.
four respectively. Yep, according to WSSAC.
What'd you say they were?
2 and 4. We have universities at 2 right now, right behind Morgantown, and Wheeling Park is at 4 after that loss last week.
Yeah, I mean, I like University in this one, to be honest with you, Drew. Willing Park, Brendan Wack is hard to stop, but University is just they keep on rolling, and they just every week they move up in the rankings, and they just seem like an unstoppable machine. And I just think that they have a little bit more athleticism. I mean,
Yep.
if for some reason Brendan Wack goes down, Willing Park that changes everything drastically for Wheeling Park, the whole offensive look. And I'm not sure if he plays any defense. I haven't really seen any defensive stats for him. He might play defense, but I really haven't. He's been more of an offensive guy. So that's kind of really what I've focused mostly on. But you just take
Yeah,
him
they
off,
save his legs.
and that's a lot of their scoring and a lot of what they do. So is they surround themselves from Brendan Wack, but that's just assuming that he wouldn't play. He's probably is going to play, so that's going to be a bonus for Wheeling Park. And but I feel like it's going to be a really tight game, and I got Wheeling Park winning, or I'm sorry, University winning 34-27.
Yeah, again, when I was speaking on University, against Musselman, they played a great second half, and they've been a second half team the first 3 weeks of the season. Which why they're 3-0. They've been bouncing back, kind of get themselves in a little bit of hole, but getting more comfortable. But if they do that against Wheeling Park, that could get them in issues real early on. And again, Brendan Wax accounted for 95% of their scoring this year. So
Right.
if and depending on his health, he was a little beat up towards the end of the Musselman game, and they try to conserve him. He plays a little bit of defense. He'll play a little bit of Mike and Sam. But he's typically just strictly on the offensive side of the ball. But we'll go ahead and move forward now. Again, this will be the game that we cover this week. It's going
Yep.
to be number 8 Spring Mills at number 9 Musselman. It's a really interesting matchup, JD. Like I said, Wheeling Park beat Spring Mills the week before and then lost to Musselman last week. Again, I still think Spring Mills is more talented. The Jones and Blake Sanders and obviously Schwartz is going to cause them a lot of issues. And Musselman's secondary, tremendously undersized, not really necessarily the most athletic, but they do play with heart. I mean, I was really impressed watching some of the film from last week's game of how they were swarming to the ball, and making up for some of that mishaps in athleticism. And the coaching, obviously, Coach Wes Smith, the defense coordinator for Musselman, came up with a great scheme, but offensively, they were able to hold time possession. I think that's going to be the biggest key, and we'll talk about it more on Friday, is whoever wins that time possession battle and who doesn't turn the ball over the most will win this game. But right now, I have Spring Mills winning this one 28-13. But again, I think this could be a toss up. Playing at Musselman is going to be a really tough atmosphere, JD.
Yeah, it is, and I'm with you right there with the final outcome. I've got Spring Mills winning 34-21. But I will say this, I think Musselman, if they want to have a chance to win and even keeping it close, and they're good for this, you keeping that ball on the ground, grinding out, first downs, chucking up a lot of that, using up a lot of that time of possession. If they can get that time of possession in their favor, and it's not not so lopsided, but it definitely favors Musselman. I think that gives them the best chance to either keep this game close or possibly come out with a win later in the game. But overall, I think Spring Mills is they're just a little more dynamic. Their lines are probably very similar. I think up front in the trenches they're probably fairly equal, but then it comes down to quarterback play, your running backs, the weapons. I don't think Musselman has a guy. I mean, even though Armatrout's a very good athletic tight end, he's not Xavier Anderson exactly. So I don't think that he's going to put up some of the flashing numbers and do some of the things that Anderson can. And I would have to quarterbacking. I love Zach Miller, but I'd have to also give the edge in the quarterback to Rylan Swartz on that. And then running backs, although I do, and again, I do love Nate Lazier and Jaden Ryan, that dynamic duo. They're just hard nosed guys that love to run the football. But again, I like the speed and the elusiveness of Blake Sanders and Tavon Jones.
Yeah, again, and Sanders, a former Musselman Appleman himself, and be his first time playing back at Musselman again, and be his last opportunity to play there too. Barring if they meet again in the playoffs. But again, I think this is going to be a tremendous game. We'll be covering that on Friday. Coverage will start about 6:40 on Home Team Sports TV, and we're really excited for that one. Again, the last 2 years, Musselman hasn't even put any points on the board against Spring Mills, and before then, Spring Mills never beat Musselman since their inception. So again, I think this will be a tremendous test for both sides. I think Spring Mills can't take these guys lightly. Obviously, they beat Wheeling Park last week, and they ended up, Spring Mills fell to. But I also look at the way Buddy Hessen is going to pressure Musselman. He's going to be bringing that blitz constantly, and however Musselman attacks that, whether that's going to be through the ground and a bunch of counters, maybe some reverses. I just don't think they can get too cute against them because Buddy will make them pay. But again, like I said, 28-14, 28-13. It'll be a two possession score. But I would not be surprised if Musselman finds a way to pull this out, especially if they can grind out in the second half. In the second half against Wheeling Park, they actually held the ball for almost 20 minutes of the game. So out of the 24 minutes they had the ball for 20, Wheeling Park only had two possessions in that second half. That'll be their recipe for winning, JD.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We're right on the same page with that. If they can keep that score close, grind out that time of possession, and get a late touchdown, or something like that. And turnovers is going to might play a big factor in this one. I think
Yep.
the game might be close enough that whoever wins that turnover battle also might be the one that comes out, on the winning side of things, Drew. So that's going to do it, guys, this week for more than a game with Fritz and Pitts. I hope you guys have been tuning in and like what the content we're putting out and some of the predictions. If you guys got some of your own predictions that you guys want to message us, or just put them in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you guys too. To see what you guys think, and see how if you're all on the same page with us, or if you guys have different views about some of these upcoming games. But that's going to do it for us. Drew, you got any closing words?
Yeah, again, like you said, if you guys have any questions for us, comments, concerns, anything, or any suggestions, please feel free to direct message us on Facebook and Twitter. Again, make sure you like, share, and subscribe all of our content. We really appreciate the support. Again, we'll be on call Friday night at Musselman High School at HD Penny Price Field in Musselman High School. So that'll be a really good game. 7 o'clock. We'll be on coverage about 6:40 there. Home Team Sports TV. Can't wait to see it again. Have our predictions, our analysis from last week. This is episode 3 of More Than the Game with Fritz and Pitts. I'm Drew Pitzer, JD Fritz, and we're out.